indulgence. There is room at the table for everyone. This is where it all begins. This is how we gather in. There is room at the table for everyone. Too long we have wandered, burdened and undone, but there is room at the table for everyone. Let us sing the new world in. This is how it all begins. There is room at the table for everyone.
Good morning. Thank you. Welcome to the Boise Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Our minister is the Reverend Sarah Lawal, and she is on sabbatical until September. You'll remember we planted bulbs when she left in March, and I promised that when they bloomed, it would be nearing the time that Reverend Sarah returns, and there they are. I'm Debra Smith, your celebrant for today's service, and I am honored to share the pulpit this morning with Dr. Saeed Ahmed-Zaid from the Islamic Center of Boise. Dr. Ahmed-Zaid will explore the familiar golden rule, and we'll learn about the silver rule and the iron rule, while he shares how the world's religions relate to this concept. I am grateful for help on today's service with Jem Emerson Page, Director of Family Ministries, Nancy Harms, Program Director, Mike Lemieux and Samuel First for providing tech support, and the many ushers and greeters, both in person and online. Thank you. And speaking of our online contingent, welcome to those of you who are joining us virtually. We have a full house, so turn around and wave. Wish you were here. But we are so glad that you are out there, and welcome to all of you joining us in person this morning. Whether you are joining us today for the first time or you've been a member since this congregation's early days, you are welcome here. Whatever the faiths you have known, if any, you are welcome here. Whoever you are and whomever you love, you are welcome here. However you arrived in this beloved place, you are welcome here. We seek to make love visible in the world, to build a beloved, compassionate community, nurturing spirits, lifting hearts, broadening minds, and enacting justice. If that call speaks to your heart, you are most welcome here. I want to take a moment to welcome those newcomers among us. We know it takes a lot of courage to step into a new community, and we're so glad you joined us today. For newcomers joining us online, we invite you to introduce yourselves in the chat so that our community can warmly welcome you. We'll share a link to our newcomer form in the chat so you can be kept up to date on all that is happening in our fellowship. For those newcomers joining us in person, we hope you'll stick around after the service to introduce yourselves. You can find a link to our newcomer form using the QR codes that are on the welcome tables. Our beautiful new coffee area is open for to-go coffee. Please feel free to grab a cup and take it home, or join us out in the courtyard. There will be delicious lemon lavender cookies that I made. Just a little plug. We have a lot happening here, from book groups to adult classes to meditation to neighborhood pods, both in person and online. I do have some announcements I want to highlight for the whole community. I am grateful to the Racial Justice team for the sponsorship and planning of our family field trip to the Four Rivers Cultural Center earlier this month. Following up on that event, the Sabbatical Task Force has another family-friendly event, the Dog Days of Summer. Please join us on Saturday, July 30th for a dog fashion show with prizes and a hot dog picnic. Watch the Wednesday Gazette for sign-up form and more information. You don't need to have a dog to participate, and we'll have a special prize for photos of your kittens, too. Huzzah! Celia Farron, Bardess extraordinaire, joins the Booth Pagan Nature Spirituality Group to celebrate the first harvest, Lugnasad, live in an outdoor concert in the courtyard at the Fellowship. Bring a picnic dinner and comfy low-back chairs or blankets to turn the wheel of the year in sacred community. Blessed be. That'll be on Thursday, July 28th at 7 p.m. Admission is by donation. Another inquirer's session for the curious newcomer will be today following the service. We are meeting via Zoom in its own breakout session. Today's session is Worship and the Liturgical Year. In the spirit of our mission to build beloved community centered around justice, equity, compassion, and interconnection, let us take a moment to acknowledge our gathering upon native land.
As we gather together, we acknowledge that the land upon which our church and homes exist is the ancestral land stolen from the people of the Shoshone-Bannock, the Shoshone-Paiute, Coeur d'Alene, Kootenai, and Nez Perce nations, along with many other tribes whose names have been lost in history. We acknowledge that our presence here today is founded upon the exclusions and erasures of many indigenous peoples. With this acknowledgement, we wish to demonstrate our ongoing commitment to the work of dismantling the legacies of settler colonialism. We honor Indigenous peoples' connection to the land and support their right to sovereignty.
It is our practice here at the Fellowship to donate 25% of our unpledged plate offering to support our social justice ministries. For the month of July, we are supporting our own Pay It Forward fund. The PIF was started decades ago now by Reverend Green to provide modest funds to help people in our congregation with car repairs, temporary housing assistance, to help defray medical bills, or to help pay utility bills. It is one way that we manifest our commitment to kindness and to the beloved community we aspire to build. We no longer have a special time during the service for collecting our offering, but there are many ways you can make a gift. You can visit our website at boiseuu.org and click in the top right-hand corner of your screen. For those of you who are interested, you can get to our giving page by clicking on the QR code. These are really magic. Or you can drop your check in our lock boxes located by the entrances. Your checks by mail are always welcome. As we enter into this time of worship, let us take a moment to breathe together. Fill your body with breath, knowing that our breath connects us to one another, to our bodies, and to our planet, and to that vast, incomparable universe we get to glimpse with the new photos. Our breath offers us the opportunity for stillness, to tune into our spiritual center, to listen deeply to our heart's own longing. As I read the poem by Reverend Kendall Gibbons, hear in the thines and the thous an appeal to what is golden, incorruptible, and eternal. Thou art the song of my heart in the morning. Thou art the dawn of truth in my soul. Thou art the dew of the roses adorning. Thou art the woven whole. Thine is the grace to be steadfast in danger. Thine is the peace that none can destroy. Thine is the face of the need-driven stranger. Thine are the wings of joy. Thou art the deep, to the deep in me calling. Thou art a lamp where my feet shall tread. Thy way is steep, past the peril of falling. Thou art my daily bread. Thine be the praise of my spirit uplifted. Thou art the sea to each flowing stream. Thine be the days that are gathered and sifted. Thou art the deathless dream. Thank you, Sue. I was remiss in not mentioning you in the opening thank yous, and our music director, Carrie Bastian. Please forgive me. At this hour, in small towns and big cities, in living rooms and ornate sanctuaries, thousands of our sibling Unitarian Universalists are also lighting a flaming chalice. With this ritual act, we are reminded that we are part of a great community of faith, committed to the ideals of freedom of belief, justice, and love. For the many beloveds joining us in our virtual community, if you have a chalice nearby, you are invited to light it with us this morning and to share in the chat where your chalice is lit this morning. With our collective chalices lit in all our spaces, we offer you this call to worship from the Reverend Gretchen Haley. Whatever you have come in anticipating, whatever you expect or worry for our world, for the future, for our lives, let it go. Make space in your heart to be surprised. Make room in your soul for the new story to take shape. Let astonishment be possible at this life that remains a miracle. Imagine here the bursting of joy, relentless and resilient, coming in waves, washing over us, with music and story and silence. And still, this dreaming together, being hope for each other, and courage to believe in this new day dawning for us all. Come, let us worship together.
Good morning, everyone. Join me in getting cozy and settling into our seats for our Time for All Ages. Our story this morning is The Invisible String by Patrice Karst and illustrator Geoff Stevenson. Let's listen. Liza and Jeremy, the twins, were asleep one calm and quiet night, cozy in their beds. Suddenly, it began to rain very hard. Thunder rumbled until it got so loud that it woke them up. "Mommy, Mommy," they cried as they ran to her. Here she is sitting in the living room. Everyone's looking startled, confused. Oh gosh. Their mom says, "Don't worry, you two. It's just the storm making all that noise. Go back to bed." Jeremy says, "We want to stay close to you. We're scared." Mom says, "You know we're always together, no matter what." And Liza asks, "But how can we be together when you're out here and we're in bed?" That is a big question. Mom held something right in front of them and said, "This is how." Rubbing their sleepy eyes, the twins came closer to see what Mom was holding. She says, "I was about your age when my mommy first told me about the invisible string." Do you see her holding the invisible string between her fingers? It's stretched way out. Jeremy says, "I don't see a string." Mom says, "You don't need to see the invisible string. People who love each other are always connected by a very special string made of love." Liza asks, "But if you can't see it, how do you know it's there?" Even though you can't see it with your eyes, you can feel it with your heart and know that you are always connected to everyone you love. You can feel it with your heart. Mom continues, when you are at school and you miss me, your love travels all the way along the string until I feel it tug on my heart. Jeremy says, when you tug it right back, we feel it in our hearts. Can you imagine the string connecting them? Here they are at school. How long that string must connect to Mom in her office. Must be a long string. Liza asks, does Jasper the cat have an invisible string? She sure does. And best friends like me and Lucy? Best friends too. How far can the string even reach? Mom says, anywhere and everywhere. Jeremy asks, would it reach me if I were a submarine captain deep in the ocean? Mom says, yes, even there. Or a mountain climber, here up on the very highest mountain? Even there. A ballerina in France? Even there. A jungle explorer, reading a book, Where to Find Very Big Snakes? Even there. Even where very big snakes are found. How about an astronaut way out in space, which we learned this week is way bigger than we thought? Yes, even there. Those beautiful swirling galaxies. Then Jeremy asked quietly, can my string reach all the way to Uncle Brian in heaven? Mom says, yes, even there. Does the string go away when you're mad at us? No, never. Mom says, love is stronger than anger. As long as love is in your heart, the string will always be there. It looks like they are getting to enjoy a nice snack way after bedtime. Even when you get older and you can't agree about things like what movie to see or who gets to ride in the front seat, or what time to go to bed. Oh, that's right, you two should be in bed. And with that, they all laughed as Mom chased the twins back to their beds. This was a really big conversation. It probably took them a long time. Within a few minutes, they were asleep, even though the storm was still making the same loud sounds outside. As they slept, they started dreaming of all the invisible strings they have, and all the strings their friends have, and their friends have, and their friends have, until everyone in the world was connected by invisible strings. And from deep inside their hearts, they could clearly see no one is ever alone. No one is ever alone. Our sixth principle says that we believe we must work for a world community that is full of peace and justice. If we want to practice our task, put our work into building a world community, then we can use our invisible strings. We can use, as our first source says, our own experiences of wonder and openness and of love in order to connect to that world community where everyone is connected, in order to experience and participate in all of those strings. So I wonder, where does your string go? Where does your invisible string connect you to? Thank you for joining in. Join me in blessing our beloved community with song, where together we learn, we grow, and we live out our values. Blessed be.
May your mind be open to new learning. May your lips bring truth into the world. May your heart know love and your hands do the work of justice as you go your way in peace. As you go your way in peace.
This morning is by the poet Naomi Shihab Nye, and it is called Kindness. Before you know what kindness really is, you must lose things. Feel the future dissolve in a moment, like salt in a weakened broth. What you held in your hand, what you counted carefully and saved, all this must go, so you know how desolate the landscape can be between the regions of kindness. How you ride and ride, thinking the bus will never stop, the passengers eating maize and chicken will stare out the window forever. Before you learn the tender gravity of kindness, you must travel where the Indian in a white poncho lies dead by the side of the road. You must see how this could be you, how he too was someone who journeyed through the night with plans and the simple breath that kept him alive. Before you know kindness as the deepest thing inside, you must know sorrow as the other deepest thing. You must wake up with sorrow. You must speak it till your voice catches the thread of all sorrows and you see the size of the cloth. Then it is only kindness that makes sense anymore. Only kindness that ties your shoes and sends you out into the day to gaze at bread. Only kindness that raises its head from the crowd of the world to say, "It is I you have been looking for," and then goes with you everywhere, like a shadow or a friend. Each week, we take time to acknowledge the many joys among us and to grieve our many sorrows and losses, so that we might lift that burden for each other and receive the blessing of this community. A reminder that you can submit your joys and sorrows online each week via the link in our website, or your bookmark QR code will take you right there. Our virtual community will continue to share their joys and sorrows in the chat. We combine our collective joys and sorrows over the month and share them in a community-wide email. This month's was in an email you should have received yesterday, and it is full of joys and, unfortunately, some sorrows you will want to take note of. It is through our sharing with one another that we forge deep bonds of community and connection. As we begin this moment, please hold Warren Bean in your thoughts, as test results recently confirmed a cancer diagnosis. A PET scan is scheduled for tomorrow and will be followed by a consultation with radiology and chemotherapy to follow. Also, Janet Fries, wife of Ken Fries, who are members of the community pod number 11, had surgery recently. And Ken says, "I am deeply saddened to tell you that Janet's condition took a turn for the worse Sunday. Now she is in ICU at St. Luke's in Meridian after complications post-op. Please pray for her and send your healing thoughts." If you are holding someone in your heart this morning, I invite you to speak their name aloud in this community of love, that we may hold them with you. May the arms of this community hold all of our joys and sorrows, those named and those that must remain in the sanctuary of our hearts. May we feel the grace that surrounds us and be transformed by the spirit of life and love, with warmth to celebrate our joys and with gentleness to soothe our aching hearts. Let us feel that invisible string right now. Breathe with me. Fill your body with breath. Breathe into this sacred space. Breathe with this beloved community filled with loving kindness. Breathe with wholeheartedness and listen to what is calling you in the silence. now it is my deep pleasure to welcome Dr. Saeed Ahmed-Zaid to the pulpit.
Assalamu alaikum. Shalom alaikum. Peace be upon you. So, in my reflection today, we're going to talk about rules. And I will begin this reflection in the name of the Eternal One, the Heavenly One, the most compassionate and the most merciful One. So I'll talk about 3 rules. The first is the iron rule. This is also known as the law of the jungle, or might makes right, or my way or the highway. So if you live in the jungle and you're at the top of the food chain, you can do whatever you want. You can eat whomever you want. But we do not need to live in the jungle to find someone living by this rule today, during these unprecedented times. So in my faith tradition, we have a name for such a person who lives by this rule. We call them shameless, a totally shameless person. And I'm sure you can think of many such shameless human beings. And the one that comes to mind right now will remain nameless. But he started an unprovoked war just because he could, and he is now responsible for the killing of countless innocent civilians in Ukraine. So this is a rule you do not want to live by, okay? You want to live by 2 other rules, which are the foundations of the Abrahamic religions, and these are the golden rule and the silver rule. So you're all familiar with the golden rule. So this is the principle of treating others as you would like, as you want to be treated by others. So in Christianity, this rule is found in Matthew 7:12 as part of the Sermon on the Mount, and it states, "So in everything, do to others what you would have them do unto you, for this sums up the law and the prophets." And in Luke 6:31, we also read, "Do to others as you would have them do to you." So you don't have to be a scholar or a reverend or a minister. This is the one rule you need to live your life. And in Christianity, in the parable of the Good Samaritan, we have actually both the law of the jungle, or the iron rule, as well as the golden rule illustrated here. So it is about the traveler, implicitly understood to be Jewish, who is stripped of clothing, beaten, and left half dead alongside the road. And first, a Jewish priest and a Levite, someone of a Jewish heritage, they come by, but both avoid the man. And finally, a Samaritan happens upon the traveler, and although Samaritans and Jews despised each other, the Samaritan helps the injured man. So Jesus is described as telling this parable in response to a provocative question from a lawyer. And who is my neighbor? The great commandments in Christianity: love God and love your neighbor as you love yourself. So Jesus answers, using this parable of the Good Samaritan. So your neighbor, basically the neighbor figure in the parable of Jesus, is the one who shows mercy to the injured fellow man. So the first law is the people that beat up this traveler. That's the iron law, the law of the jungle, just because they could. And the golden rule is to help your injured neighbor, as the Samaritan did. Now, some people say that the Jewish priest and the Levite who came and didn't do anything, that's the silver rule. But I do not agree with that, okay? This is more like indifference. No, they just didn't care, okay? So what is the silver rule then? So it's the negative form of the golden rule, which states, don't do to others what you don't want them to do to you. Don't harm them, because you don't want to be harmed by them. Don't torture them, because you don't want to be tortured by them if the situation was reversed. So, I'm going to give you a story in Judaism during the 1st century, or so at the end of the 1st century BC or beginning 1st century AD. A Gentile challenged two rabbis, Rabbi Shammai and Rabbi Hillel, to explain to him the Torah while he was standing on one foot. So whereas Rabbi Shammai dismissed the man, Rabbi Hillel took on the challenge and gently chastised the man, saying, what is hateful to you, do not do to others, do to another. This is the whole Torah. The rest is commentary. Go and learn. So the golden rule and the silver rule are really two pieces of the same coin, okay? One is an active form, the other one is kind of an inactive form, okay? But you should live by both of them in order to help others. So let me give you some other examples of the golden rule and the silver rule. For example, in Islam, a maxim said by our prophet, he said, he is not a true believer until he loves or he wishes for his neighbor what he loves or wishes for himself. In another maxim, he said, he is not a believer whose stomach is filled while his neighbor goes hungry. So, as we know, the necessities of life are basically clothing, food, water, and shelter. And we can extrapolate on this previous maxim to someone who has all of these necessities while his homeless neighbor goes without them. That's why the prophet said another thing, another maxim, and he said, he is not a believer or a true believer, he who does not alleviate the suffering of others. In Buddhism, the golden rule says, hurt not others with that which pains you. In Native American, live in harmony, for we are all related. In Hinduism, treat others as you would yourself be treated. In the Baha'i religion, blessed is he who prefers his brother over himself. So let me give you two more interesting stories from Islam. First, in a hadith, a Bedouin came to the Prophet and grabbed the stirrup or the saddle on his camel and said, teach me something that I might go to heaven by doing it. So the Bedouins were known for being kind of rough on the edges and not having good manners, okay? So the Prophet gently replied, as you would have people do to you, do to them. And what you dislike being done to you, don't do to them. Both the golden rule and the silver rule, okay? Now, let go of the stirrup. In other words, the prophet was telling the Bedouin that the golden rule and silver rules were enough. All he had to do was go and act in accordance with them. Another amazing story about the sense of justice of the Caliph Omar, who was the second caliph after the death of the prophet, is when he had to travel to Jerusalem to sign a political treaty. So wearing ordinary clothes and taking only his assistant and a camel with him, he said to his assistant, he said, if I mount the camel and you ride on foot, it will not be fair to you. If you ride the camel and I walk on foot, it will not be fair to me. If we take turns riding the camel, it will not be fair to the camel. So the golden rule is not to be applied just between human beings, it's to be applied to everything, animals, plants, the whole planet. So we're all interconnected. So when they approached Jerusalem, the local inhabitants spotted a man riding a camel and another one walking beside him. And they immediately thought the rider was Omar, but when in fact it happened to be the servant's turn. So they went to greet the servant instead of Omar. So Omar, when he entered Jerusalem to sign this treaty, he was invited to make his prayers in the church of the sepulchre, and he refused. Because and when asked why, he said, well, I am afraid that future generations of Muslims will claim this church if I pray inside. So I would rather not pray so that this will not happen. Another thing, too, is when he visited the Temple Mount, he was horrified to find it used as a garbage dump by the Byzantines, because this place is sacred for all three religions. And so he immediately ordered the place to be cleaned, and he brought back Jewish families who had been expelled from Jerusalem and who were living on the outskirts of Jerusalem, and he brought back these families and allowed them to come back, basically. And you can find this story in Karen Armstrong's A History of Islam, a short history of Islam. So it is not by chance that the golden rule or its negative, the silver rule, are the cornerstone of most religions. And if you don't know it, there's a Golden Rule Day on April 5th, and we are reminded to treat others and the planet as we would like to be treated. You know, there was an aha moment for me when I reread my scripture and other scriptures, and I realized that all of the verses, or many verses in the Quran, for example, are really infused with different versions of the golden rule or the silver rule. So if you read the Abrahamic scriptures, for example, if you read the Torah and you read the 10 Commandments, the 5th commandment says, honor your father and your mother. In other words, love them, show them mercy, visit them not just during the major holidays, but also when they are sick or when they are lonely. The 6th commandment, you shall not murder others. Now that's the silver rule. The 8th commandment, you shall not steal from others. That's another silver rule. The 9th commandment, you shall not bear false witness against your neighbor. The 10th commandment, you will not covet your neighbor's possession. These are all examples of the silver rule. In my scripture, in the Quran, chapter 24, verse 22, the Quran urges the wealthy to donate to their poorer brethren and to forgive others who trespass against them. In chapter 88, verses 1 through 4, the Quran chastises someone who always demands a fair share as a buyer, but defrauds others as a seller. These are all part of the golden rule or the silver rule. In chapter 4, verses 8 and 9, the Quran demands to treat other people's orphans with kindness and justice, just as they were one's own children. So these are, in the Abrahamic religions, these rules are revolutionary concepts when they are applied to the extreme case of the stranger, who is different because of ethnicity, language, religion, and other differences. These rules teach us empathy toward the other. Empathy is different from sympathy. It is a nobler emotion that requires one to temporarily suspend one's own emotions and experiences when dealing with the other. In fact, it may be argued that most intercultural, interreligious, and interracial conflicts stem from the inability of some of us to empathize with the other. 5 years ago when I gave a sermon here, I talked about the shooting of a black man by a police officer, and I could talk again today about shooting of another black man by a police officer with 46 bullets in his body. Now imagine that person was white. Would these police officers have shot that many bullets towards a white person? So without empathy, a person cannot temporarily suspend one's own stereotypes and prejudices when evaluating the other. And being able to walk in someone else's shoes is at the core of empathy. So we need more empathy in society. In fact, I've written many columns in the Idaho Statesman saying that our politicians should be taught empathy. So it is important to realize that the golden rule, for example, is not about manipulating others to obtain what one desires. It is not about oneself. It is about treating others thoughtfully and with respect as you would like them to treat you. And the principle of the golden rule is ultimately about selfless service to others without expecting anything in return. And Karen Armstrong, a well-known religious author who has been hosted many times in Boise and Sun Valley, said, "The golden rule is not an option. It is the key to our common survival." So let me finish with another bird history, the hummingbird story, okay? So there is a fire that is started by lightning in a forest, and all its animals run scattered and scared, except for a little hummingbird. So the courageous bird goes to a nearby creek, fills his beak with water, and returns to spit his precious cargo on the raging inferno. All of the animals are perplexed, and some of them laugh at the bird and ask, "Do you think your actions are going to help in any way?" And the bird says, "I may be small and tiny, but I'm doing all I can, while you guys are sitting, not doing anything." So the reason I bring this up is I would like to encourage you to Google the COVAX initiative, which is a conglomeration of countries and vaccine manufacturers to make vaccines accessible and affordable to other countries, especially the poorer ones. So there is no end in sight for the current pandemic. It seems to be going on and on. And as the rich countries have rushed to inoculate their populations, poorer ones have stood on the sidelines. And only in Africa, for example, many countries in Africa have only like a very small percentage of people vaccinated. My native country of Algeria, which is kind of a relatively prosperous to some of these countries, the rate of vaccination is like 10%. So the 54 wealthiest countries are home to 18% of the world's adult population, but have ordered 40% of all available vaccines and are basically hoarding them. So our own local hummingbird here in Boise, Idaho, is the Cathedral of the Rockies, the Amity campus. I had the privilege of being invited to make a video, and Debra can give you a link to this video where some of our faith leaders in Boise have appeared, as well as Mayor Lauren McLean, urging people to help with this initiative. So this initiative strives to make people aware of the worldwide need for vaccines and advocate for equal distribution as a justice issue, and to contribute financially to supply COVAX to places in the world that struggle to get the vaccine. So this initiative is called Love Beyond Borders, and it is basically to love our poorer neighbors as we love ourselves. And Love Beyond Borders seeks to engage the public in 4 actions. 1, to donate to UNICEF and COVAX. 2, to communicate with others and raise awareness of the pandemic's consequences and the need for vaccines. 3, advocate to government and corporations to support COVAX. And 4, engage your organization, your house of worship, your family, and or your community to donate, communicate, and advocate for COVAX. So I will leave the information with Debra, and you're welcome to learn more about this initiative. So finally, I would like to remember my own father and his spirituality. He used to tell me that, when you point a finger at someone, you actually have 4 fingers pointing at yourself. So before you blame others, you need to blame yourself first. Realize that you may be at fault first. And he had several Catholic friends, and they taught him the following prayer. Now, my dad was a little paranoid. So here's the prayer he liked from his Catholic friends. He said, after saying your prayers or supplications, at the end he would say, and God, and please God, if you have to send me an enemy, please send me an educated one. I would like to kind of change this, because I'm not as paranoid as he was. And I would like to say, please God, if you have to send me a friend, please send me an educated one. Thank you.
Let us take a moment in prayer as we think on what Dr. Ahmed-Zaid has said. This was adapted from an interfaith prayer for peace, which was co-authored by Christian, Jewish, and Muslim clergy during the time of the 1991 Gulf War. Eternal God of many names, for some, a mysterious, unnamed source of all, creator of the universe, great and wonderful are your works, wondrous are your ways. Thank you for the many-splendored variety of your creation. Thank you for the many ways we affirm your presence and purpose. We are grateful for the freedom to do so. Forgive our violation of your creation. Forgive our violence towards one another. We stand in awe and gratitude for the inspiration you call forth in us for persistent love for each and all of your children, Christian, Jew, Muslim, and those of other faiths and no faith, or whose faith resides in humanity. Grant to all of us and to our leaders especially attributes of the strong, like Omar, which are mutual respect in words and deeds, restraint in the exercise of power, restraint in the exercise of power, and the will for peace and justice for all. Eternal God, creator of the universe, may we embody your will for peace and justice. In the name of all that is holy, we pray. Amen. Blessed be.
Babies are crying, people are dying. Violence is the law of the land. The world's in a shake. It's time we wake up and answer to a higher command. Fighting and fussing, screaming and cussing, never solved a single thing. Come, let us reason. Let's start believing. It's time for us to make a change. Oh, we must find a way to love one another and stop the hate that breaks us in two. We must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. Love is the golden rule. Love is the golden rule. You see it your way, I see it my way. What if we both could agree? There's a solution, a love revolution that starts and ends with you and me. Oh, we must find a way to love one another and stop the hate that breaks us in two. We must learn to live together as brothers, or we will perish together as fools. Oh, It's time that we wake up. Love is the golden rule. Yeah.
But I think he told us to be woke. Friends, I invite you to place your hands over your hearts and stand as you are able for our closing blessing. Look around at one another. May we live into the joy available to each of us when we make room at the table for everyone, when we let love guide us. May we continue to yearn for the peace that is possible when we finally set aside striving for more at the expense of those whom the world considers less. As we journey toward this beloved community of kindness, let us acknowledge with pure hearts, blessed are we all. Go in peace.